Welcome to Metaphysics My Perspective. Tonight's podcast is basically going to be talking about narcissism, a spiritual perspective or a metaphysical perspective. So, what is narcissism? So narcissism, can be defined in many different ways. It's defined as, mental disorder. It can be defined as someone that someone's heart is closed off and they have no love for you or no love for anyone, just basically, their self. So basically, selfish people, self-interest, there's a more defining definition of a narcissism. And there's many different ones. You've got your left brain psychologist viewpoint and what they say it is, and you have somebody like me that's just doing podcasts, just talking about their experiences and what their definition is, and you just got the average person. But it's all going to change because we're all creators, so we all got our own internal definition of what things are and what they mean. All right, so to me, to define a narcissist, I would define it from my experiences. So I would say someone that tries to belittle you, tries to put you down, gaslight you, can never take responsibility for their actions, usually has some type of parental issues in life. Either they had a narcissistic parent or the parents were never there, never wanted to take responsibility for them, could have let them run wild, could have, been jealous of their own kids. They could have, they could have lived in abusive homes, could be generations back. So many ways to define it. But because this is a spiritual and metaphysical podcast, we're going to talk about deeper than just the physical and emotional experiences. Now, we all know that most drug users and people that, resort to drugs and chase the dragon, if you will, whatever it is that they are into and what they want to do, we all know that that's usually some form of escapism. So they're trying to escape from something, in their life that's not working for them, or it's a constant state of trauma, whether it be their thoughts, their emotions, or whatever else. But sometimes it's deeper than that. And what I mean by that is, you have cases where these people have been traumatized to the point of soul fragmentation, where pieces of their soul is broken off, which basically leaves their aura open for attacks, for spiritual attacks, for parasitic attacks, spiritual parasites, and whatever you want to call it. And basically what that is, you've heard them called entities, you've heard them called demons, disincarnates, tags, implants. It can be a multitude of things in this multidimensional reality. But what these defining characteristics are, and like what to look for when you see people do this, is one is shape-shifting. Now, an experience that I can think about was one time with my father, and we had basically been having a lot of violence in the home. I got to the point where I was a teenager and I got tired of him whooping up on me, so I started to defend myself. And I remember going in and talking to him and telling him that I would like this to stop, that I would like to change our relationship for the better. And the weirdest thing happened right before my eyes. And I told him I didn't want to do this no more. And when I do that, when I said that, there was from the side, I was sitting on the bed, and I was, I could see him on the side of his, his left side of his body and his face. And I watched his chin and his face kind of morph, like almost energetically or spiritually. Now, a lot of people would think that's crazy. And you'll hear me say that a lot in these podcasts because normal people don't talk about things like that. But when you have people that are mystics or people that are, psychic or into certain things like I am, they will see more things because they are looking for it. They've studied it and whatever. And a lot of people could say it's just your imagination, but it's not that either. It's, if you find yourself seeing things like this, just like my video about shadow beings, if you see something, more than once especially, and something's telling you that there's, you saw something, then it's probably a good chance that you've seen something. So anyway, back to this. So I remember, saying this to him and thinking, it's going to be a moment where he's going to break down, or he's going to say, yeah, I would like it to stop too, or I would like to have a better relationship. But I didn't see it at all. What I seen was him morph, like shapeshift, and what I mean by that, his face, like the curvature, everything, and he in this kind of sadistic or evil, if you will, smile come across the side of his face, and his eyes kind of changed. And I remember being like, "What the hell?" Like just in disbelief. Like cartoons where the question mark pops over top of their head, or you're like, "Oh, just." You don't know what to you just did not expect that to happen. And then I realized that, wow, this is something inside of him wants this. Something inside of him is drawing this out of me. This is something that is on a much, much deeper level than just two people that get along, or just hard-headed or stubborn, or just mad at each other, or just don't, mesh well together. There's something else pulling the strings here, like a puppet master. And I've seen it in other people too, because if you're like me, I grew up being a very innocent person, and innocent to the point of throughout my life, not understanding violence. A lot of starseeds are like it, not understanding violence, not understanding the bad in people, like automatically just taking a long time in a way to develop in that way, to understand emotions and motivations and why people do what they do, And I always look deep into that. And, it wasn't even until, man, seriously, my late, I'm like my 40, well, I'm 40 now, but it wasn't until my late 30s I started really understanding, a lot of that, and realizing that I'd always been around that type of behavior in people, and I, it was just, you could say I was a late bloomer or a late developer in understanding certain things. It's because I myself would cast so many illusions on people and see the best in them, and which to me is an admirable trait, when you see the best in people and you see them do stuff. And when I seen it, even when I was younger in my 20s, I hung around with a lot of people that did questionable things, and did music with these people, and this one group that I hung out with, and a lot of that behavior was based on, it was almost like, when I go back and look at it, it was almost like a story or a movie. It could have been many movies in one. And I remember feeling very, because of the abuse and trauma and turmoil in my life, I remember hanging out with, being attracted to power and people that were, had respect from people because they could fight or because they had whatever. And so I clicked up with a group of people that I thought that, I would be friends with, and, with them forever. And we probably would be if I hadn't changed and decided that, certain behaviors and situations and things were unacceptable. I would probably still be there, tolerating that shit, or dealing with certain people's actions and accepting it and saying, "Oh, it's okay, I forgive you." And at that time I was, on drugs and certain things, and I acted, out too. And I remember, they've always said that you are like the people that you hang with. And so at that time we were listening to rap, and we were, it's all about power again. Like I said, that's what I was attracted to, and I felt weak, by myself. And I would hang out with these people, and it just made me feel like that I was tougher, that I was stronger, that I was harder. And in a lot of ways, it did. It really did mold me into the man I am today. A man that actually can stand on his own 2 feet by himself and not need people, But I seen behaviors in them and the people around them, and and I'm not trying to disrespect these people. I'm just giving examples, but and that's why I'm not going to say any names and whatever. But that way it people can draw upon whatever they want with this podcast. They can listen to it and they can say, "Oh, he's talking about him." You can say that, but you don't know that's who I'm talking about unless you were there, you experienced it. And even if you were there, you still don't know who I'm talking about, because it could be everybody's perception is different, and it could be a multitude of people that we were around at the time. And I'm not, of course I wasn't innocent. I did certain things that, that I, still myself can hold myself accountable for, and wasn't completely right, and things that I regret back then. But things that, things that happened during that should not have happened. We all clicked up in this group, and it was supposed to me, as far as my perception and what I understood about it, it was supposed to be a group of people coming together for a higher purpose, in which, a group in which everyone in that place deserved respect and had a skill set and had something that basically brought something to the table. But it wasn't like that at all. It was very much a lot of narcissism and a lot of ego and things like that. And that's one reason we couldn't get where we needed to go, is because no one could ever come to, one person, or it could have been more than one person, but one person wanted to be the leader of everything. And in any type of business situation, it's what's best for the business, not for the ego. And these are lessons that we learn every day. And now I understand that, it just wasn't meant to happen. We had to learn these lessons. And then, of course, they went their separate ways and they do their own thing. They're very successful. And I can say, wow, they've done it. And, the same talents that I recognized in them as when I was younger, they have utilized those talents and made something of themselves. More so in a lot of ways than I did, and I've been doing my talents, but because I talk about controversial topics and things like that, it's a little slower for me. A lot of their things are more widely accepted, so it's easier for them. But I always recognized the talent within these people, but I also never felt like that I got the respect that I deserved. It was all about, these are the type of people that, if you got in a fight with one of them would record you and show everybody, or one of them would pull out a camera and record you in secret and then show it to everybody else, and they would all laugh at you. And that's crazy stuff. To me, that's narcissism. And they could hear this podcast, they can listen to it. This is stuff that I would tell them straight to their face. This is not me hating or saying any negative stuff about them. And that's why I'm not mentioning any names. But these are just things that are unacceptable in friendships, and and I understand now that, looking back at all those things and what causes those people to be that way, a lot of it was survival. These people were on their own. They had to learn to survive by themselves. Of course, when you're on your own, you're trying to survive. That makes you jealous of people that have things that, you don't. Like like me personally, I had certain things. You could say that I had money, or I come from a middle class family, so my family made a lot of money. They made a lot of poor choices, and they didn't really have anything to leave me, when my parents passed away, they didn't really have much to leave me. But then, on the flip side of the coin, these people had more talent in their fingertips that could have easily afforded them the life of luxury that it seemed that I had, and that's why I never understood the jealousy, because all you had to do is believe in yourself and, use that, especially when you got somebody like me that's on your team, that's supporting you, that's investing money into you. And that's what I never understood. It's like, how can you hate somebody or hate what they have or talk about them or use them for whatever, instead of being grateful? Because if someone is willing to spend money, invest in you, in your talents, and try to get you somewhere, they should have, as far as my perspective, they should have the utmost respect. You should be giving them the utmost respect. You should be cherishing them like they're your family. When you call them, they should come. There was several situations, because we were organized kind of like a gang in those days, or at least that was my belief or my perception at the time. And so to me, it was the illusion of, I could call you anytime I need you and you'll be there for me. And that means if I'm in another city, I'm getting hurt or whatever, but little to no avail. That never was possible. These people never had my back. They only had theirs, and it took me a long time to get away from that, because, you don't want to leave you don't want to let go of things that mean something to you, or that you've been around certain people forever. These people would do diss tracks on me. They would, say, they would try to steal your girlfriend. They would do anything. There was just so many different, and I'm not just talking about this certain group. I'm talking about just the people that had these narcissistic tendencies that were just selfish and all about themselves. And, I remember several of those people that from my past, they got big or whatever I was always there for them, and I helped them do things and stuff like that. And like I said, I was the loyal friend, but when I needed them, they wasn't there for me. And I won't talk about any, these people know who they are, but I'm not going to sit there, if they listen to this podcast, I'm not recording this to bring up old beefs, and I'm not doing this to put the spotlight on you. That's why I'm not going to give you any, put no name on your, no fame on your name or anything like that. This is just about narcissism and why people act the way they act. And a lot of times it's trauma, it's the way they grew up, it's survival, it's entities, it's, there's some of these people were on drugs, things like that. They were around people, a lot of darkness, a lot of shadow stuff going on. And it makes people act in ways that they themselves don't even realize. And some of these people, they never ever, some of them never ever seen the error in their ways. They never understood that they, never thought they did anything wrong. One of them was never thought they were ever wrong. So if you're never ever wrong about something, that means that you believe that every act that you do is justified. And if you believe that every act you do is justified, then you can never be sorry for anything that you do. You're never going to apologize. You're never going to whatever. To me, that's a very selfish tendency to have, because how can you ever heal or mold or change or do anything, And it's hard to see the duality in these people, the light and dark aspects of these people, and realize all the good that you had with them, all the fun, all the lessons you learned. They're, like your family, but then you have to give them up because they personally get worse, And it wasn't until one of them actually started to be very successful themselves that I realized that everything that I ever did for them would never be returned to me. And it's not like I was doing things to get a return out of it. It wasn't that. It's just, when I was doing it, it was so selfless, and not selfish, but selfless, meaning I never even thought about myself. I put my body on the line to help them in situations. I went out in snowstorms to take them to take them to get food when they needed it. And the stuff that they did was betrayal, from the from the highest aspect, or from the highest, level of a classification that you can put these situations in. And one thing, and how this basically deals with metaphysics and spirituality is that, I was on a spiritual path even before I was awakened and was aware of this, and I was always different. And I remember calling on one of them when we first met, and I had this bully, this guy was giving me a hard time, and I hadn't stood up to him yet, And so I told him about it, and he was ready to, be there for me. It was the only time they ever did this. And he told me to pull up on this block, and we went back on these back streets, and we pulled up on this thing, and there was all these people that I went to school with, and he told them the situation and said, hey, who's going to ride, with us? And every one of them said, who's it for? And they look in the car, and they said, oh, and they seen me, and they said, oh, and none of them would help. And I understand that now, because, why put yourself on a line? But what it told me at the time is these people didn't respect me. And, for years I didn't understand. I continued to hang out even with the people that wouldn't ride for me that day. And he didn't even understand it himself, the guy that, that was willing to, do that. And he told me later on in life that he's like, I never did understand why they would do that. And I tried to explain to him that people that we hung out with that did music with us and things, I told him that this one guy would prank call me or whatever and cause a lot of issues. And he always told me that, I didn't know what I was talking about, or like he would try to tell me that didn't happen, like I was making it up, or like I was caught in this illusion. And it used to make me really mad, because I was like, man, like, how are you going to tell me what I experienced? I know, exactly what, I seen and what I heard. This happened to me, And I guess he just didn't think about that time when he asked those people to go with us to handle this situation, and wasn't none of them down to do that. Wasn't none of them willing to help out because it was me. And so many years, that's why it says it has a metaphysical meaning to it. For many years I had that. I had these haters that would come over to my house. They would eat my food. My family was welcoming. They liked my family, but they never liked me. It was just, there was just something about me, that they, and it was years later that I was, doing this parking thing where I live now, where I was collecting money for parking. And this guy pulls up, and I hadn't seen him in years. And I'd found out that he had dated my family, like my niece or whatever. And he pulls up, and I was excited. He said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I was upon viewing myself in that moment, I remember seeing myself like I'm coming off like I'm weak, like I'm so happy to see him. And he was just looking at me like he was one of those people that wouldn't get in the car that night, and he was just looking at me like I was nothing, and didn't even say anything. Like he pulled up, just didn't say nothing. And I said, "What's up?" And he put his fist up, kind of like me to bump fists. And I don't even do that. It's something that I don't even do that much. Back in the day we used to do it a lot, but I'm not even used to that. So he just looked at me with that, that gaze of his that basically told me he was like just someone that, not to be trusted, or he didn't like him. And he didn't say a word, and he did that, and then he was gone. And I remember having him, we was in a recording session one time, and I remember him, I invited him over to my house, got the studio set up, and he's behind my chair, right? And he, I'm in the producer chair or whatever, the computer chair, and he keeps bumping up against the chair like he's trying to, punk me. And when I say punk, I mean trying to disrespect me in a way, like try to get a rise out of me, or thinking that he can just, push me around anywhere. You're in my house. First of all, this is not something that you should be doing, especially, but that's what he thought of me. The same guy that was in the car that I was telling you about, and the same guy, one of the same guys that wouldn't get in the car. And so around all these people, and he keeps doing that, like with his knee, just hitting that into the back of the seat. And I'm thinking to myself, is this dude crazy? So I remember he sat down in the chair later on, and I started doing it to him, like, thinking to myself, do I really, thinking I had to prove something. And so he never did anything, but it was just one of those situations where it's narcissism. It's mental disorders. It's people that have some type of internal beef with you, and they don't, and you have no idea what it is, and maybe it's because you got a studio and they don't have that, and they, or they think you're weak, and they think they can do whatever. And the same person threw a basketball at my head when I was a kid, and I can, in a way, I can see why he did it, because we was playing a game. We was playing basketball, and I wanted to do a dunking contest, and he was like, "All right, we'll do it after we play this game." And so I kind of got mad, like a little, I guess you would say, little brat, whatever. And at the time, and I was like, "All right, well, I'm not going to play then," and a lot of kids do that. One person don't get their way. I mean, even grown adults do that. They go, "Ooh, I'm going to go to my room because you're not going to do this with me." Like that happens in relationships with couples and everything. So, but there's something deeper. Again, it's, when it comes to metaphysics and spirituality, you see things for what they are. And the reason that it's what this has to do with metaphysics and spirituality is that, when you're on a spiritual path like I've been, you will be met with all these different challenges. And a lot of people, because you are innocent, or you give that vibe of being kind, or whatever, they think you're weak, and they think they can dominate you. And a lot of times they can, because you're from a different, you're a different frequency, and it's the light in you. They see that light in you, and they don't have that, and they're jealous. And, just like a moth to a flame, they're attracted into your bubble, and they just don't like you because you've been afforded certain things. And even when they get big and themselves, or create a career themselves, they still don't like you. It's like, it doesn't matter what you do, how nice you've been, or, I invited you over, I fed you, took care of you, whatever. It doesn't matter. They still have an issue with you. And really it's an issue with herself, because whether it's that they have some type of possession, entity, or whatever, it's some type of, situation that causes them to be that. But what it's really about is about you on your journey. You're on this spiritual thing. And what you're learning is, for me, it was learning about duality, and learning, the pros and cons of being like a light worker versus someone that doesn't like your light and they're trying to, get rid of it. And there was people that I would meet along the way that, I met a rap group that we absolutely loved, and I still hold them to a high accord in a way as far as their music. Personally, their personality, I don't. But I remember going to this car show with one of the guys I told, speaking about, and the guy, the guy that was the musician, he grew up in the projects, and he did a few things and things that would be questionable or whatever to make ends meet, things like that. And he spotted me right off. Like when I was at this, I had this one guy that was like, this one guy that we all respected, and he accepted me. He liked me. He gave me, they all had a nickname for me or whatever, and he called me that, and he let me in his house and respected me, and we're still, cool. It's been years since I've seen him, but he was connected to all these people because he had he'd been everywhere, and so we met one of the main guys of this group, and the guy looked at me, he basically showed love and respect to the other two people, but he seen me and he spotted me like right off, like, and just, he pretended to do whatever, like he slapped hands with me, whatever, did a little shallow hug, but he looked at me like, he stared at me like, who are you? Like, you don't even belong here. And really, at the time, I really didn't, I was in with a crowd that, for whatever reason, I just didn't belong, I didn't belong with certain people, but the guy didn't know me. And it was funny. I'm a white guy, this guy's a black guy, which that doesn't make any difference, but at the time it did. And his main person, his main artist, or his guy that basically helped start this record label, he was a white guy, but he had been with them the whole time, and they had been together since they were like kids, So, but I guess in a way, he's seen me as like I was an enemy, or I was someone that didn't belong there because I couldn't be trusted, But it was more my light than anything. And a lot of light workers go through this. They go through this. They basically go through hell. They go through where they have all this abuse and all these things that happen to them. Especially the ones that are healers or end up being counselors, and they go through all this stuff to, in a way, become their greatest version. And then all these people that don't like you for whatever reason, because they think you're weak or whatever else, or that you've been afforded so many different things, they try to find ways that they don't like you. But really, like I said, it's deeper than that. It's your light. Your light is blinding to them. There's something within you that they don't like, that they don't have, that they want. And you'll hear a lot of other light workers and people that do podcasts about this, and they will, they will basically be talking a little bit of what I'm, about what I'm saying. But when it comes to the narcissism, people like us, we'll even meet, like the people will end up falling in love with a lot of them. And what I realized my entire family to some degree was narcissistic. My sisters, my siblings, my nieces, a lot of my nephews, my cousins, my uncles, and I just could not understand it. I never fit in with that family. I never fit in with my main family. And sure, I don't fit in within my family now. I had an older sister that completely shunned me from birth, just because she was jealous, and she even told me that, But that's what it's about. You'll have all these people that don't like you, and you'll either have to, segregate yourself from them, or they'll do it to you. They'll shun you and make you feel like you're unwelcome. Then you'll never be around them again. But it's funny because all these people that don't even realize that it's a training session for you. It's kind of like hell before heaven. It's like before you become your greatest version, you got to experience the darkest, deepest, pits of hell, and your strength comes from climbing up out of that. And even when you get there, like I remember, I'd lost a bunch of weight one time, and that one guy that I told you that in the studio session, he seen me, and I had changed a whole lot. Like I guess I grew up and became more mature, and I was very serious, and he could see that. And like, I could tell the difference, like him seeing, watching me and seeing me from a distance. I could tell that he respected that. And he even treated me different for a while, but whenever I loosened up and became, I guess you'd say, jolly again or nice again, it was a whole different thing. It was like, he didn't like you, again after that. So, the thing about this podcast, and it's, you're gonna find a lot of people that go through this stuff when it comes to, the light worker path or the star seed path, and you go through it, and if any of this resonates, please drop a like or whatever, because I'm just basically freehanding. It's just a topic I felt inspired to talk about. But even in the spiritual community, I noticed that people that I thought was going to be just like me, had the same issues as me. And I went to this one shop or whatever and got involved with these people. And for the longest time, I thought that was like my second home because I connected with everyone. But as the light decreased during COVID and during the you know what I'm trying to say, the light on the planet changed because a lot of fear came in because of the pandemic. And a lot of people became like they used to. They started getting closer to their families, but the light in them diminished because people started getting into fear. They were afraid of people. They were afraid to be together in mass groups, and everybody was trying to segregate people. And people started to change, and I started to see who they were again. Who they is almost between the years of 2012 all the way up to about 2017. These people that I seen during that time, they were all a little bit better, because of the light that was available to the planet, and they all ascended just a little bit, But when that light decreased on the planet and the pandemic happened, it brought all that fear in. So fear is a very low vibration, and so all these people went back to who they used to be. And you could see the darkness again in them, and you could see the same people that you thought that you had grown close and bonded with. They become some of the worst, possible people they could ever be. And it's just a message for the star seeds and the people out here that go through this to understand why you go through it. That it's bound to happen. If you're awakening right now, or if you've awakened the last couple of years, when you first awaken, it might feel like bliss to you. You might think that, this is truly heaven on earth, but there will be a shift and it'll go back down. It's just the way it is. It's kind of, duality is what goes up comes down. So don't get all misled on the, the 5D stuff, because that definitely will change. You'll shift in and out of, it's multidimensional. So you'll shift in and out of dimensions of consciousness, and, you'll become aware of what it's like to almost be like a guru, and then you'll shift back down into your ego or selfishness, and then it'll boost back up. It's what happens. But even the partners that I dated, the love partners that I dated, karmic soulmates, twin flames, whatever, they came in, and they came in narcissistic. And unfortunately, those people that I had these wonderful connections with, they didn't want to do the work. They stayed the same, and I know they have a lot of regrets now because it didn't work out. But you just gotta realize that if you get to a pinnacle or a point that you decide that you're gonna stay spiritual and you're not gonna go back into your old ways, you got to realize that you got to let those people go, because the same people that are still doing the same stuff and not understanding what they're doing wrong, even if they become successful and they have every reason in the world to treat you better and treat you right, but they don't, you have to realize that's who they are, and they just can't, they've not done the work. They're still in their shadow self, and they just cannot let go of some of the things that happened to them. And if you're doing good and jolly and whatever, and your light will irritate their demons, and they will basically be the same. And they will run smear campaigns on you, and they will hate you for just walking away from them. And that's just one of those things that happens, unfortunately, on the spiritual path and on the spiritual journey. So there's not a whole lot more I can really say about this, except that, that's what that is. When people hate on you, when people want to see you do bad, it's narcissism, it's gaslighting, it's emotional manipulation. Every bit of that is all tied together. You're usually going to see anyone that tries to break your spirit or break you down, or basically worships you and builds you up and makes you feel like, that they're your number one fan, or they're in your corner only to try to break you down after. That's 100% narcissism. And if you go through this, just know that there's never going to be you're probably never going to see that, even male narcissists, they do the same thing. They will show you all this love, and it's still love bombing. And it's basically, you get to the point where you're supporting them and worshiping them, and then they will try to break you down when they feel like that your light outshines theirs. So it's, hopefully this podcast is informative for you, and you can understand that a lot of these people are, it's not just them. I mean, it's narcissism. It's what you call a love bite, where they are entities attached to certain people, especially if, the narcissist or whatever is like your significant other. You'll have certain things that do not want to see y'all come together, and there'll be, interference on a mass scale. Your friends, family, everybody will get into it to try to, stop it. And when that happens, you have to realize that if it was meant to be, it would happen. A lot of times that person will reject you, or your friends will reject you, or whatever, and you have to realize that it's basically your cue to get out of there, because it no longer serves you. It's not for you. You learn what you're supposed to in that situation. Now, if you're like me, you could be a slow learner. It would take you a long time to understand what is going on. But anytime that you're in situations like that, and you're in a group or whatever, and you are experiencing any type of emotional abuse, physical abuse, or mental, or anything else, you don't have to stay there. You can be strong and walk away and be on your own. My suggestion is that you do it before you get too old to learn how to, make friends again, and things like that. Because when you hang out with people for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, you don't, and you make a lot of friends through them, or you still got your, like, the main three or the main four. It can be hard to do that again if you have any type of anxiety or social issues. So, but if it does happen to you, and you're like me, you can't let this stuff leave you bitter. You've got to keep your heart open and maintain that innocence about you, and realize that it's okay to protect yourself. It's okay to use your abilities and tune into those people, but just pay attention to the people that's in your surroundings, because they always show you who they are. No matter what they say, their actions will always speak louder than words. And just pay attention to them, and keep a notepad or fucking digital notepad on your phone, and write down these. Whenever you get some type of have some type of awareness of something that ain't right, or that you see something, write that down, and you put that person's name and write down the signs, and look them up, and then match them up with, like, what this is and what they are. And a lot, and for the most part, these people will not change. It's not about them changing. It's about you understanding that it no longer serves you, and so that way you can move on from that situation. So basically, that is, this has been Narcissism. This is Metaphysics, My Perspective. I hope this was beneficial and informative, and I'll be doing a lot more different podcasts in the future on different topics. I know it seems like I go all over the place, but everything that I talked about basically was relevant to the narcissism personality disorder, and as far as entities and my experiences when it comes to that. So thanks for listening, and I hope to catch you soon on the next one. Have a great month.